Okay, hopefully we are live now. Okay, so let me share my screen, please. Here we go. Okay, so good evening, everyone, to the viewers who are watching this. Today, we are going to create a basic HTML form using HTML, and we'll also provide it some styling, some custom CSS to it. Okay, so let's just dive into it. I'll be using Sublime Text Editor for this tutorial because it is like one of my favorite IDE. It's so simple. Like I use VS Code as well for the IDE, but Sublime Text Editor just makes it the right thing. Now, inside my HTML.js folder, I used to work in a lot of languages, but currently because we are going to do this stuff in HTML, we'll be creating a new folder inside JS practice folder. So one thing which you can learn from me is that you can, you should segregate your files and folders according to their topics or according to their work. Like, let us say right now, we are going to create an HTML form. I am inside my HTML.js folder, and inside my practice folder, I'll create a new folder for this particular task. For creating a new folder, we'll just right click on any of the folder. And the thing that is how these all folders are mapped inside my Sublime Text Editor. Well, let's keep it for some other day. Inside my practice folder, I'll right click for getting this option of new folder. Once I get this option, I'll just click on it and enter an appropriate name for my folder. That is, for this tutorial, let's say a basic form, I guess. That works. Now, right click, create a new file. And when we save this file, we'll be redirected to the same folder on which we right clicked. Okay, so that's one neat trick I've learned from here. File name, let's keep it index.html. And as to why I have kept it as index.html, .html is the basic extension we require for creating our HTML documents. That's one thing. But as on why to index, like why this index.html is there, why index? The thing is, whenever we open a notebook, let us say when we are opening our textbooks in which we have written content, which we have to read, we open the book and the first page we see is of index. Well, first page can be of like about the book, but the second page definitely would be for index. And index page is the first, and in the same manner, when our files will be on the server, posted on the server. So index.html will be the first file which server would try to look for. And if it does not find that file, it will look for the other file, which you would have obviously told to the server using JavaScript. But for now, we'll be creating index.html. Let's save this. And as to why I like Sublime a lot is that it provides me some handy snippets for the code. So as of now, I have got like the basic boilerplate for HTML, and I do require it. In this, we see a lot of tags. Now, for those who are new, I hope there's no one new over here and everyone understands what all stuff is written over here. But just for a brief, HTML is a language in which we have to use tags, a lot of them. What are tags? Let me give you an example. So we do have written in the line number 6, title. This is a title, but it's not just written title, like not normally title, like T-I-T-L-E. It's not like that. It has got this bracket. Now, those who don't know, this is angular bracket, the starting one. We call it the starting angular bracket. And then there's this, the ending angular bracket or the closing bracket. Okay. And this thing is known as a tag. And using this thing, we can do some wonders in HTML. In fact, the whole HTML works with these tags. But there's not just this. We have to, complete the syntax. And to do that, we need to close the tag. And as soon as I pressed as soon as I pressed this /, I just got my whole code written automatically, like the ending tag itself. So this is another cool feature of this Sublime Text Editor. That is, it helps us to, complete our code in time, because it saves a lot of redundancy while writing the code. Because let us say I'm writing H1. Okay, I'm copying this piece of space. I've got a lot of tags which are unclosed. So in this manner, I can close them easily, but definitely won't encounter this kind of situation anytime while coding. But this is one cool feature of Sublime Text Editor. Moving forward, let's jump back to the topic, that is basic form for reference, let us say. We'll keep this as a reference form because in this, we'll try to use a lot of input tags. So as I just told you that we try to write tags for form, for creating a form inside HTML, we'll type a form tag. And now just make sure you type a little like FORM. I haven't completed the whole word, but I have got the option for it. It's known as auto suggest. And this auto suggestion is telling me that the first option I've got over here is form. That is what I require. I'll simply press enter and voila, I've got my opening tag, my closing tag. And now I just need to fill up the content inside this tag. And what's the content inside it? Well, those input tags I was just talking about. Input tags for now, I hope you are understood with what tags are. But what is input tag? Let me press enter. I'll again, for opening a tag, I'll start with this angular bracket, the opening angular bracket. I'll say INP. That's the starting credentials of the INP input. And I see this thing. This is known as input tag. In fact, you see this option over here. Sublime Text Editor is telling me that this is a tag. And when it gets expanded, I mean, when we press enter, it gets expanded into input, then type and name. We'll get these options. So as we got this option, that is type and name, we need to specify the type of this input tag. Now we have various types of input tags. That is, we can either provide some text inside input, or maybe, you must have seen this radio buttons in which you would select some option. Let me take an example of form. I'll try to open some Google form if I can. Forms.google.com. Let us see if I've created some form inside this Google form. Here we go. I've got this reference form. I'll just open that. And inside this, you see these things, these 1, 2, 3. These things are known as input tags. Like this is long answer type text. This is a photograph. Actually, this is not an input tag. In Google Forms, you get an option to add photographs. But this definitely is input. This XS, this S, small, medium, large, and all. These are the options. And for this, we have used radio buttons. So in the same manner, when we have to create this radio button inside our form. But before that, let's add a text input field. Yeah. So I just simply need to specify the type of the input tag I need to create. So the type of the input tag I'm going to use is text. I'll just remove this because we do not use it. It was name is equal to. This is an attribute. For those unfamiliar with this term attribute, attribute you can say is a property of tag, because a tag is just a basic information. That is, if I need to create a form, I would open form tag. But let us say I need to provide some extra information that on the click of submit button, what should this form redirect to? For that, I have method, I have a lot of more attributes, for which we'll discuss about this later on. But for now, let us stick to the topic, that is creating an HTML form. I'll remove this name. It is just to specify a name to this input tag, but we do really not require it. What we do require is an ID. Now, what is an ID? I am Manas. My name is Manas. Manas is kind of ID for who I am. My name is the kind of ID for who I am. In the same manner, we have this input tag, and let us say I need to specifically talk about this tag. Let us say I have a lot of input tags, but I just need to talk about the second input tag. For that purpose, I would give it an ID. Let us say INP2. Let us say it stands for input 2 for my naming scheme. But the thing is, now you will be very much clear. That is, I'm talking about input tag. You will ask me which input tag? The second line, this one. Okay, so for this purpose, we need to provide an ID to each input tag, which we can access in JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a programming language, or rather it's a scripting language, which is very much like cooperative or optimized for HTML. In fact, you can give a lot of functionality to these tags, this in HTML document using JavaScript. But let's keep it this much only for JavaScript. Let's give an ID to this input tag, that is, we'll make sure a person enters his first name inside this. So I'll give it fname. Fname stands for first name. Now, we have another very cool attribute. But before that, let's see what all stuff we have got till now. Let's see the output of this document. I'll right click anywhere on the document. Right click, open in browser. Now, my default browser, that is Google Chrome, is opened up on my window. Over here, we have got something. And voila, we have an input tag. So I can input any kind of text because definitely its type was text. Let's see what happens when we change this type to number. I've got auto suggestion in Sublime. And yeah, Sublime has some paid versions as well, but free version would work like a charm for us. So let's try typing some text over here. If you can hear this, I'm trying to type something, but I'm unable to. In fact, let us select some option over here. We were getting some options. I am trying to select them, but you can see there's nothing input. Let's try typing some numbers, and voila, we have got some numbers. So why has this happened? Because we have given this input tag type number. The attribute is number. And so as the name suggests, this is number we can try typing. We cannot enter any kind of text, but there's an exception to this. That is, you can type E, but no other text, like no other alphabet is allowed. The reason behind that is E is a number. Well, in mathematics, E stands for exponent, and this provides some exponential power to a number, but this is not a mathematics class for you. So that much is about E. Let's move forward. We have a lot of other types of input tags, but let us keep, a format. Let's add text first because we do require that, and that very cool attribute I was talking about. That's placeholder. What's a placeholder? Let me just show you with rather than telling you, it's better I show you. Your first name. So do you see any difference than before? The thing is, we see this your first name written over here, and that's exactly what we wrote over here. So what happens is when try typing inside it, like my first name is Manas. So yeah, you can see that the message which was earlier present over there has now been removed. The only reason is it was a placeholder. What's a placeholder? This input tag in itself carries no information as on what value should be provided inside it. But as we add placeholder, a user would get this feedback, that is, he needs to enter his first name. For that, we can add headings and labels as well. But placeholder just does its work. It looks cool. It provides a really good experience to the user. Okay, so like we have added our first name, let's try adding last name. Control+V. I'll give it an ID of L name. The type will be definitely text. And over here, let me change this message to the last name, your last name. Let's press F5. And first thing that you can see is your first name is over here. Your last name is over there. Let's try adding my name, Manas. I'll press tab, and tab would automatically shift my focus from the first input to the second input. I'll say Gupta, that's my last name. So you can see we are entering some values inside these input tags. Now, the next tag that we require is our phone number. Let us say we are getting some data entered from the user in which we need his basic details, right? So this is because this is going to be his phone number. The input type will be number, as I just told you. The ID, let's change it. Let us say it's number. Now, why am I changing ID? That's the main question. There's one rule, that is you cannot apply the same ID to various tags. That's one rule. But why is it so? Let me give you some analogical answer. That is, my name is Manas. Let us say there's another person whose name is Manas. When you need to call Manas, which person are you calling? Right. Now, in real life, you can definitely point out like, okay, you Manas, you one, or the other one. But with this HTML or JavaScript, when we'll use these IDs in JavaScript, we won't be able to point out that easily. And that's why we provide some different IDs to different tags, right? And let's save and see the changes. You can see we have done a blunder. That is, your last name is over here, but it is your phone number. Let me change this. Okay, let's see. Cool. Also, we get this cool, what do we call it? You can just say you can increment this number and even decrement it using these buttons. And these buttons are by default property with input tag. You will get them by default. What's next? What we want is your first name and last name looks good in the first line, but your phone number should appear in the next line. For that, because these input tags are inline elements. Inline elements are those elements, or inline elements are those elements which will come inline. You'll see them inline when you will declare them inside HTML document. But let us say you need to break these lines. So simply apply break tag. we have got this break tag. And what's cool about this tag is it does not have a closing tag. You don't see any \break. In fact, it closed the form for me because that was the tag which was parent to all these. So I'll just delete this, and break tag has got no closing tag. I'll press F5 and voila, we have got our phone number in the next line. That's what we required, right? But let us add some more spacing. So let us try adding break again. Paste and F5. So what I did is I copied this break tag and pasted it in the same line. And cool, we have got our phone number with a lot of space in between the first name, last name, and phone number. Looks good. What else can we get from the user? Maybe his email ID. So there's one cool, another cool feature in Sublime Text Editor. I can click on this line anywhere, like let us say this. I'll press Ctrl+C. Then if I press Ctrl+V, the same line will be copied in another line. And now I can simply change the type to mail, and ID, let's keep it mail again. And placeholder shall be your email ID. Looks cool. It's again coming in the same line, but now we know how to break these lines. So I'll simply copy these two tags because I would really love some space in between. But we have placed them in the wrong line. We needed it after this your phone number because we need to break the line after number. I'll press Ctrl+V and paste the break tags. Let's see. And cool, we have got your input, your email ID tag over here. Now these input tags are fine, but let us say you must have seen these labels placed above the input tags in many of the forms, right? So we do have that option in HTML. In this input tag, I just need to press enter. Like if you can see properly, then I'm creating a format. That is this thing, which is known as element. Yes, for those who don't know, when I start the opening tag and then enter the content, and after that, I have to close the tag if it requires that. This whole thing converts or gets turned into element, or is properly known as the element. It does not get converted into element, it's element already. But the thing is, this thing is properly known as element. So when I say this is my one element, this is my second element, break tags are often not considered as element, but you can call them the one. It doesn't really matter. But definitely, this input tag is one of my element. So my elements are breaked using break tag. And we have done this input element, but we do have another element which can provide labels to these inputs. That is label. And let's add some label. That is first name. This sounds cool. And maybe I can do this. What is this? Of course, it's an attribute that we have learned. But what is this for? Or what is this for? For means FOR, not what's this for. So this is for our, let us say, this input tag. How would we tell HTML that this label is meant for our this input tag? Well, if you remember, we gave it an ID, and ID is what this input tag is like called with, right? This is some unique name to this input element or input tag. So we can use this for our for attribute. And now, if I press enter, you can see this is our first name. And see one magic, this one cool trick over here. If I click on first name, you can see that it automatically focused on the first name. It did not focus on the last name, not number, just this, right? This is what this for attribute is meant for, right? And let's try giving this label to each and every element in my document. I'll simply select this, I'll copy, I'll press enter, I'll paste first, then let's make it last. Then let's change the for tag, that's name, spelling mistake. Done. Let's see the output. Seems pretty fine. Let's add attribute for number. This is number, or in fact, phone number, right? Then let's give it to email ID. For is going to be mail, email ID, save F5, and cool. If I click on phone number, it will focus on phone number because that's what I've given it. I've given the ID of phone number to this label. Email ID, let's try entering. I'll press, I have got auto suggestions. And in fact, if you see, we are getting these auto suggestions, but we do not really know where are they coming from. Well, these auto suggestions are stored in a cache memory of browser, or you can say local memory of the browser. Maybe I would have entered these email IDs in some other form in some other website, but I'm able to see these suggestions over here. And because I have given input type mail, I'm just seeing the auto suggestions of mails. If I say first name, I'm seeing the auto suggestions of if I ever use my first name as Shadow. So it's Shadow. In the same manner, phone number gets us phone numbers as auto suggestions. Now I've got all these first name, last name, phone number, and email ID. What's next? Let us say person enters his first name, last name, and all the information. What happens next? He must, we should receive this data, right? We should receive his first name, last name, so that we can maybe contact him for marketing purposes or something, right? But if you see that there's something missing, we are missing a button. Now in every form, we have this button that is input, and we can again use this input tag for creating a button. Let me show you how. Input type submit, which would create a submit button. You can even use a button tag. It's like this. And then you can say its type is submit. Both of them would work fine. Both of them are similar and same in fact. So for this tutorial, let us use this button, and I'll enter some value. Let us say if I save and show you, you don't see anything inside button. Let us give some message inside button. That is, this is submit button. I'll press enter and you see a submit, but it's too close with email ID. Let's add another break, right? Let's follow the pattern, and voila, we see a submit button. So as the person would enter first name, last name, and when he verifies that he has entered the correct details, he can click on the submit button and we will get all his details. But how are we going to get these details? Let us say I'm going to enter my first name, last name, and all, and as soon as I click on submit, what will happen? Well, the thing is, the whole data should go inside our database. Now here's this new term, database. What is database? These data items, or you can say my name, is a data. This data is stored inside database. But why do we require a database? Because as soon as I press F5 or refresh this page, my data item is lost. So what we need to do is, as soon as the person enters submit button, let us say I click, I enter my name, first name, last name, email ID, I can select the phone number and email ID. As soon as I click on submit button, my data shouldn't be lost. It should be sent to database, and then page can refresh or do whatever, because now we have that data. So that's why we use databases to store the data and use it and manipulate it for our own use. Okay. But let's add some styling. That is something we can do, and that is something in the scope of this video. Let's open my HTML. Now, to add styling to this form, what we can do is we can try some in-page CSS. Now, for that, I need to open style tag, and I need to define some rules. Rule says that inside my form, there's this label. Inside my form, there's this label. I need to increase its font size. Or let us change its font family. For those who are unfamiliar, let me show you what's a font family. I'll say font family sans serif. You can note the syntax. I'll press F5. Did you see some change? If not, let me show you what changed. And for that, I have just commented down this font family thing because I want to show you what changed. I'll press F5. Did you see? Now check carefully. I'll press F5 and it just changed the font family of the font or the text which we have in our document. So that's what font family does. What I want with this form is that, all these fields should be centralized. Centralized in the sense that they should come inside center of the document, because right now they're not. So for that, I can simply target form tag. And now there are some properties which I want, because I just really want to complete this form quickly. I won't be explaining them in detail, but I would be able to tell you that what property does what. Like for now, I'm giving some width to this form. Let us say 500 pixels. Let us give some background color to it. Let us say teal. It's a nice color. Then to this form, I'm giving some height. Although by default height is auto, I'll give it a height of 500 pixels. That would make a square form. I'll press F5 and you see we have got a square. Although maybe we do not require square because this is too much for us. Height is not 500. That's what required for this one. I'll say 300 and this works fine. And teal, although color is fine, very good, but it's not complementing our font right now. So I would change it to sky blue maybe. I need a light shade. F5, that looks good. What's next? One thing that you can see is this last name field has gone down a bottom line. The reason is that it hasn't got the whole lot of space for it to occupy. Okay, so for that purpose, I'm increasing the width of the form so that it can get some more space. I'll say 600 pixels. F5, this looks good. Now let's add some padding so that this content does not stick to the borders of this form. I'll add padding to the form, padding and 50 pixels maybe. Let's see, that created a whole lot of difference. Now, as I just told, I want these fields to be, in center. For that, I'll say display grid. Let's see if there's any change. Oh, there's a lot of change. And now you can see that first name and last name are not in the same line. So to do that, I'm using a trick which I may not be able to explain right now, as again, I want to complete this tutorial as soon as possible. I'll say div paste shift to improve the indentation. If you don't know indentation, this initial space is known as indentation. It improves the formatting of our document. And now we see them in same line. Plus, we do see that this thing is occupying the whole space, the whole container, but these are not. Let's improve these. I would say all the inputs inside the form occupy width to be 100%. And let's see if it brings some change. And it definitely did bring some change, but we did not require this much of change. For that, again, I'll be wrapping these tags inside another divs. Div stands for division. We can create as many divisions as we want. Just make sure your code should be logical and tidy, because this tends to create a lot of mess inside a document. But it's right now like this. Let's give divs some dimensions with 50%. Let's see if it brings some change. Yeah, it did. And why do we see these? Okay, I'll apply some inline CSS now. Style, display, flex, and voila, we see this, right? That's good. But still, they are not coming in the same line. Now, I have opened my developers tool. For those unfamiliar, what's developer tool? Well, you can say these are the tools given to developers by which they can test their document, by which they can test the positioning and a whole lot of features of their document. So this is my div. Let's see what property is making them like 50%. Okay, that's one. I've just got it. If I remove this, you can see clear difference. And if I say width to be 100%, what does it do? Oh, it's making things right. That's what we require, right? So developer tools really are helpful. I would say this input or wait. Okay, I would say div to be 100%. If I don't really give it any percentage, let's see what happens. Okay, so it's resizing according to the natural width. Okay, that is what we do not require. So I'm doing this. Now, because I have applied display flex over here, I can give this property gap inside the items of flex. I would say gap to be around 0 for the column gap. I'm sorry, 0 for the row gap, 0 pixels. And for column gap, I would say 30 pixels. Let's see if it works. And yeah, it does. It has created a separation in between. Our submit button seems fine, but we can improve it. I do not write developer tool anymore, so I just removed it. I'll open the body tag to bring this whole box into center. So this I would call body. I'll define that there's body. Its width should be 100%, although by default it's 100%, but we should make sure that we are adding all the properties so that, by chance, it does not changes by itself by default. Height should be 100 VH, and I'm removing the default margin. You can see that this thing is known as the default margin of body, and I'm removing that. F5, and now that default margin is removed, and now I'll place items in center. For that, I need display grid, place items to in center. So what will it do? You can see clearly, it has centralized our whole input form, right? Now, this is our first name. These are last name, phone number, email ID. Let's improve the submit button. By default, submit button has got these properties because we have applied display grid on its parent. But let us say we want to change this. We can simply apply class to it. So now this is another method of using CSS. I would say class is, let us say button. And now if I need to define a rule for this button, I would say dot ptn width. I don't really require width, or maybe I do. So width should be 50 pixels. Height is okay. Then I need some padding. Padding should be on the top and bottom. It should be 30 pixels, or maybe 20 works fine. And right and left, 50 pixels minimum. F5, we see some clear change. Let's see what wrong happened. So this is a button. And maybe because of width, yeah, width is something which is doing this mess up. Okay, because what happened is that submit thing, this submit text is not in center of this button anymore. So let's remove this width and see what else we can do. I'll save it. And now this is like this. So we need this button to be a little shorter in width. How would we do that? 50 pixels was too less. Let's try 100 pixels, shall we? So it's like this. Maybe 200 pixels. So it's like this. 200 pixels are actually good. Very good. Now we need to centerize this inside on the x-axis. If you know what's x-axis, I hope you do know that. We need to centerize it. And you can see a clear grid over here, a grid system working over here. What we need to do is we need to say margin auto. Hold on. Now, how did this margin property work? Well, the thing is we have applied display grid property, due to which this button has got some space around it. And that space around it has got some automatic margin. Okay, and that's what making this button to be centralized. And I guess let's keep this tutorial till this much. I hope my teaching skill is now very much familiar with you guys. Let us close this soon.